All right, so how do you fund your acquisition of a real estate investment? Or frankly, a lot of investments. Now, there's a lot of different ways to finance. And yes, at the end of the day, it comes down to the borrower and the buyer, but I wanted to kind of go over some of the ways to use financing, how we do it, and some general rules of thumb. Once again, my disclaimer, this changes with everyone. It depends on a lot of things, but there are some general rules that you should be made aware of. So first of all, how to fund and buy properties, there's syndication, okay? Syndication means you're raising funds from other people to come in on a deal with you and buy that property. Now, these funds are structured in lots of different ways. Generally, you can structure it in two formats. And one format is just you have partners and you go in together. The other way that you format it is you have two different separations of the fund. You have a general partner, then you have limited partners in that fund. These limited partners, think of them more as passive investors. Now, for the first deal, if that's what you're trying to get into, most of the time you're raising capital from friends and family. So this is a great way to get started in real estate. In fact, it's an avenue that most people take. It was an avenue that we started, and how we funded ours. We funded ours through our family's funds, work effort, sweat equity, right? That's what that's called. And then we worked other jobs and had sales jobs, and we poured that money into the deals as we moved forward. So syndicating is small that people use to get in, but it's also really, really big. Large funds with hundreds of millions of dollars syndicate funds, okay? Now, don't confuse this with like REITs. Those are totally different, and we have another video on REITs. But syndication can be done at a very small level. You can get complicated as you want with this. As a general rule, I prefer simplicity. A group that we put together to buy an asset that was presented to us, there was a location that was presented to us by an individual in that market. We came together with them and a couple other partners and did the deal together. We worked together to do it. We figured it out. We problem solved together, but it was just a partnership agreement. There was no general partners, limited partners, and that's a great way to do it. Now, the downside to doing that is you may not like your partners. If you don't like the partners, or you get into someone that's a real pain in the butt, that can cause really big problems. One of the reasons that's a huge downside is it's just not easy to get out of those things. It sounds easy on paper, but let me tell you from experience, it gets messy. There's lots of arguments over valuations. There's all kinds of stuff. And that is why it's so important when syndicating, whether it's a partnership or structured out as a general partner with limited liability partners, and you go get an attorney to help you format that the rules are always very clear and always decided up front before any properties are ever acquired. And I mean, you want to look at the nuclear, explosion of situations, and there should be rules. How do we all get out of this? And what does that mean? Who gets what and who does what? Think of everything you possibly can. Get attorneys involved. You need to have legal documents. This all needs to be written out, okay? No matter how small the deal is, it should be treated as if it was a massive and the biggest acquisition of your life. You really need to look at it like that. You want to get it done quick, and you want to get in on deals, and you want to move fast, but do not sacrifice speed for good outlined rules and partnership agreements. I mean, this will save you massive amount of time and lawsuits. Next thing is a home equity line. So if you own a home and it's appreciated over the last 10 years, like many people's homes has, you can pull what is called a home equity line, okay? We call them HELOCs too. And that's a line of credit that you can go out and you can pull the funds from that and use that to go and acquire a property. One of the things that I think you need to realize when you do this is you're using debt to buy debt, or to buy an asset with debt. It's not that it's necessarily bad, but what a lot of people do is they look at the property and say the property cash flows without ever putting the extra debt payments that they just took out on their house as part of the acquisition cost and as part of the expenses of the cash flow taking out from that investment. you can't look at it like that. You need to include the expense of that capital into the new deal. And a lot of times that makes it hard to make those things cash flow. If it doesn't, you shouldn't do it. So you need to make sure when you're using debt and taking out debt to buy more properties that it's a good deal, it cash flows, and it's worth that extra risk and extra liability. The next level that a lot of people look towards is an SBA loan. Okay, SBA loans have lots of pros and lots of cons. I am personally not a huge favor of it, but one of the pros is a really big pro. One of the pros when looking at is availability. Okay, this means that SBA loans are very stringent on their requirements and acceptance. Okay, I think this is actually the strict requirements in selectiveness is a con, but at the same time, it's availability, meaning that lots of people that can't get financing from traditional banks, they will go the SBA loan because their idea or their asset is really good. And the bank will underwrite it and say, okay, this is really good. We'll go in and we'll fund this deal with you. Now, low down payment and long repayment are probably your best things that you have going down. Most people getting started in real estate will get a lower down payment on an SBA loan than any other way to do it. That's a huge plus. One of the cons, though, is the difficulty in underwriting. And this is what I think trips most people up, particularly in real estate. The difficulty in underwriting and the long appraisal time and the long approval time, it makes it hard to move quickly on deals because the deal's gone. So if you have a good deal, you're taking too long getting financing, you just don't have enough time to do it all. Now, if you have a relationship with a person that is selling you the property, they're aware that you need to get SBA financing, and they're okay with you going down that route to see if you can, it's a really good option. These also, though, too, require you to sign on the dotted line. So it is personally guaranteed also. Credit unions. I put this one in because in the world of banks, a lot of time credit unions are overlooked. And for a lot of locations in the United States, credit unions are the best bank or way to go get financing available because credit unions are really familiar with the areas in which they work. Perfect example of this is I live in Idaho. Now, Boise, Idaho, which is growing very, very fast. We have 500,000+ people, and for us in the Intermountain West, it's a large metropolitan area. But to an underwriter from Wells Fargo in New York, they don't even know that we're not Iowa. So they're not going to get aggressive on those loans because what they see as a farmer's field, our local credit union sees as huge possibilities and a wonderful piece of land that has a tremendous value. They'll get a lot more aggressive because they understand the market. So credit unions can be a really good option when maybe larger banks don't want to go with you or finance you. Okay, CMBS loans. All right. The pros, the cons. Okay. Commercial, excuse me. These commercial loans have some pretty big pros and some fairly large cons. We have two of them we have two properties that we financed through CMBS loans. Now, we're making another video that'll explain exactly what a CMBS loan is. So if you are watching this video first, go back and watch that one, because for this video, I just want to give you a quick pros and cons. The pros are they're non-recourse, okay? They're non-recourse, high leverage, they have competitive rates, and they are assumable. There are some really, really great pros with CMBS loans. Now, there's also really big cons. You have high fees, high reserves, hard to get out of, and you can't do any multiple loans. So if you gain a lot of equity and you want to put another, if you want to borrow against that equity, they're not going to let you do that. So you can get in an equity trap where you got all this equity but can't do anything with it. The fees are really high on them. And when I say they're hard to get out of, they can be really hard to get out of. They are assumable, which makes it great if you're selling the property and somebody wants that loan, okay? The reserves are really high because you remember they're not counting on you to pay it back, they're counting on the property. So when you're talking about like CapEx, they want a lot of money in that fund. and they want it to always be there. So a significant amount of your cash flows will go into reserves to make the holder of the loan feel very comfortable that their position is safe and secured. So this is kind of a quick overview, and I hope it helps and understands best the market and some of the options if you're looking to get into real estate. 8 ways to go. Now, once again, I got to make this clear. Markets change constantly. In fact, most of the regulations on CMBS loans, and when we got started 4 or 5 years ago, and we're just getting into it, the loans are completely different. So use this as a guideline, but not a rule, because these things change and the market change and it changes. It's dependent on the borrower and the asset. So any one of these may be a great opportunity for you one time, and then not another. We use multiple of these all the time. When we started, our financing was very different than now. And in 5 years, we'll be doing a different method to finance our properties then too.